So in this video, I'm going to talk about my grapple with self-love. I don't want to speak for anyone else, so this is just related to me and some of the women in my family that whether I've seen or spoken to that, and some friends that grapple with the same thing. Self-love is I feel like it's a very general thing unless you have steps to break down what that is. I suppose it differs for everybody. I don't want to sound closed-minded or naive or anything like that, but I know for me, growing up wasn't easy, so a lot of what I did, like I got good grades in school, I was very artistic, a lot of things that I did and I attained and received any accolades or anything like that was so that my family would love me and accept me in my eyes, because I felt like they didn't, and that's just what I felt. Everybody's narrative is going to be different. You can be in the same store and your narrative would be very different. So for me, growing up and being that certain things happen as far as my mom had me young, and my father's situation, and that's for another blog, well, another video. A lot of that played into my security and stability, growing up, and especially being a teen. I moved around a lot, so I had some type of moral core, I believe, right and wrong, and not that I didn't do things that hurt people, but I had this thing in my mind where I didn't want to make anyone unhappy. So even if I wasn't happy, I probably did that well into my 20s, and just now at 31, getting a grip on validating myself and appeasing God, really, because that's what's important to me. That's what my self-love now is rooted in, because it's not something that anyone can take away from me. On my journey, I found God for myself. It wasn't anything that a religion taught. It wasn't anything that somebody said, oh, you gotta go and do it. It was something that it was like the missing piece for me, the void. We all have voids that need to be filled, but we often fill them with temporary things, with things that aren't that substantial, money, people, and people, I mean, I'm talking about bad people, negative people, people that you should not have in your space and that steal your energy and, just really just take a lot from you, and it just doesn't feel good to be around them. I feel we don't honor ourselves enough, and that's a part of self-love for me, is honoring myself more in my inner feelings instead of what something might look like. It doesn't mean you have to be rude about it, but I definitely honor myself a lot more, my intuition, because to me that's God. Like when you get that gut feeling, when you get it's like something isn't right but you just don't know what it is, you gotta listen to it, because it may not make all the sense to you right then at that time, but down the line I promise you, like it's gonna come to light. Everything in the dark comes to light. That's why you should always do good and be good even when nobody's watching you, because whatever you do is going to come back to you a million times fold. Not 10 times fold, a million times fold. So it's very important to do good and to put out good. But anyway, as far as self-love, when you tell, sometimes you have your conversations with people. I know guys don't have it as much, but amongst females, you say, girl, you gotta love yourself. And it's kind of like, if you were never taught that, if you were never given the blueprint for what that is, if you were never shown that growing up, if you, like me, I personalized every bad thing that happened to me and took it upon myself and felt like I wasn't good enough, even though, it's not necessarily what someone does to you, it's whatever they're going through. They can only operate out of their current consciousness. So if they're doing something to you, or you take it that way, they're doing something to you, it's not to you, it's the only thing that they can project, because that's where they're at mentally and emotionally and psychologically. And it doesn't create an excuse for them and say that it's right and you have to deal with it, but it should allow you, if you're able to have more compassion and not take it personally, because And just, if you can remove that person, remove it. And sometimes it's family, so, you know, when you're younger, it's a little harder to do, to keep your distance. But sometimes, you know, you have to honor yourself. If somebody in your family that you love is not respecting your feelings, your space, anything that you're saying, it's okay to keep your distance from them. You can love them still, but you have to know your boundaries. Like, you have to set that tape. Like, you can call them, say, hey, I'm just checking in. Once they start to get crazy, you gotta go. I gotta go. I'll talk to you later. Love you. I mean, it was hard for me to do that at first. I would just find myself reacting to everything, you know. I would be on the phone, whether it was a friend or family or whatever, and a person would upset me, and I'm just like, I would just react. And it takes a lot of conscious effort, and honestly a lot of prayer and a lot of faith, but I was able to, not that I don't ever react, because we're human beings, but I have more of a conscious effort to do so. So I try to take responsibility for my feelings. Like, if something comes up, and I've written about this in my blog on WordPress, when feelings come up inside of you, it doesn't matter what someone does to you. It could be messed up what they do to you, but you have to really, like, look at it yourself and say, why am I feeling this way? Don't automatically deflect on the other person, because the other person is doing what they know to do. But for yourself, and to have peace, why am I feeling like this? And honestly, if you do that enough times, like it's almost like a mental checklist, that when people say stuff, you kind of just like, you know, whatever. Let them say what they're going to say, or don't be around them. But the key thing is to not personalize it, and to try to create a process for yourself to not do so. And it's very, very hard, especially if you're very sensitive and energy driven, because we tend to take on energy that we don't even want sometimes. But you know, it all comes back to giving back to yourself. But self-love, you know, creating boundaries, is saying no and meaning it, is honoring your inner self, your intuitions. To me, is honoring God, and your spirit self, and not giving into every single desire that, you know, I don't want to sound biblical, but if I do, it is what it is. But you don't want to give into your flesh all the time, because that has been known to get us in some really freaky situations, literally and figuratively, you know. And that's not always good for your soul, you know. You exchange energy with people, and if you're around the wrong person, their energy will latch on to you, and you don't want to be around that. That's toxic for you, and it pollutes you. And it's okay to say, you know what, I've severed, you know, not easily, but I've severed friendships of 10 years. Some friendships have naturally severed, you know, and honestly, you have to let that go as well, because God is creating room for better things. Not that those people were bad, or, you know, but for you, God is creating better for you. Like, and you just have to kind of let that go, and not try to grab back onto it, because then you're gonna be stagnant, and then wonder why you can't progress. Because sometimes those, you know, where you're going, those people can't come with you for whatever reason. So you got to kind of let the natural evolution of things just happen sometimes, and not try to hold on so tight to something that, you know, you may not know why. You may not, you know, it may not have all the answers right then, but down the line it's going to make sense. And then you open yourself up for more opportunity, for better things, for positive things. It's not always easy, because I still have, you know, I still think about people that I've had in my life in the past, as far as friendships, that meant a lot to me. And, you know, I still love them. I still wish them the best. Sometimes there are times I wish I could talk to them, but I already know that's not going to lead down a good road, so I'm just going to leave it alone, you know. Just pray for them and wish them the best. But as far as self-love and giving that advice to women, like, honor yourself and free yourself. You know, I put myself in a box for so long, this image of perfection and validating other people and putting their feelings before mine, like I was saying earlier, and just, you know, because I had that void, because I didn't feel like, you know, I didn't feel like I got that love from my family, so I went out and looked for it, whether it was with friends or dating relationships or whatever the case, and I ended up in some pretty shitty situations because of that, because of acting out of that void, not honoring myself, but honoring that lack. And I didn't honor it in a good way. Like, it was just like, it was almost like an addiction. Like, I had to find a fix for it, but I didn't know how. And then at the time, you know, I was looking for God, but I was going to Sunday church, and I wasn't finding it there. I just really wasn't. You know, I've been baptized, and I would sit in church, and I'm just like, the only time I would feel something is during music, and it was just like, there gotta be more to God than this. And you know, but I definitely sought my worth and validation and some sense of security, even though it was false, in other people, you know. And when you do that, you end up disappointed, you end up hurt, you end up in unsafe situations, you know. So it's very important to just honor yourself, really. I think that's what self-love is honoring yourself and creating boundaries and knowing what's good for you and what's not, and actually listening to yourself, not just giving people good advice, but listening to your own advice, and knowing that you are enough. You are enough. All of us go through stuff, all of us struggle, but those are things that show up to show that we need to grow and we need to change. And it's not a bad thing. It can be rough. I'm not saying it can't be rough, because I had my moments when I was looking at things in such a negative way all the time, and it was just sucking the life out of me. And I was like, you know what? Like I mentioned in the last video, you know, my grandfather really shifted my view, and really tamed the confusion and my vision, like really honed in on taking care of myself first, you know, and honoring myself, cutting out toxicity in my life, no matter who it was. I didn't care who it was at the time. And because I you know, when you want something different, you have to do something different, and that's what I did for myself. It was very drastic, and it was a little crazy because I felt by myself. But if you can't be by yourself, then nobody else is really going to make you happy. You have to be happy with yourself. And society does a good job of teaching us that we're not good enough. You know, makeup, you got to do this, you got to wear a weave, you got to have a big butt, you got to, all that stuff is superficial. Like, when you get to a certain age, all that shit is going to sag. I mean, you know, as far as women go, you know, and men are taught to find their confidence and security in, you know, how many women they can conquer. And that is a whole nother video, because men are not, especially black men, are not taught to deal with their emotions. And they're human beings just like us. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I will be teaching my boys, God willing, you know, to deal with their emotions. And it's okay to have them. It's when you suppress them is when you end up with these issues. And having sex with tons of women is not self-love. It's not confidence. It's actually very insecure. It's one thing if you're, you know, I mean, it's a void, but men and women, they fulfill them in the same ways, but then they don't. I feel like there's more pressure on women to look a certain way in order to be appealing to anybody. And that's just not the truth. A man is going to love you for you. A real man is going to love you for you. And you should take care of yourself for yourself, not for any guy or any other person. But, you know, I don't want to ramble. But I just wanted to kind of talk about self-love and how important that is. And I'm on a journey, you know. Just part of the YouTube thing for me is freeing myself, you know, in addition to sharing my experiences, hoping that someone else can relate and maybe get something out of it, or maybe be inspired to think on a deeper level. You know, I appreciate anybody who watches, whether it's one person, two people, but I really appreciate anybody who watches and gives me feedback. I encourage you guys to leave comments, leave feedback, especially if what I'm saying is resonating with you, and especially if what I'm saying helps you in any way. If you share the video on Facebook or IG or Twitter or whatever, I encourage you to comment and let me know how it helped you, and we can have a conversation. I think that'll be dope. But that's about it. It's my 2 cents. Hope you guys are having a good week so far. Be blessed.